We're here today with Allison Jessee from the Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, and Allison is going to talk with us a little bit and tell us about herself and her background and some of the reasons that got her into rehab counseling. So thanks for being with us today, Allison.
Thanks for having me, Kathy. I'm just going to explain a little bit about how I became a rehab counselor and was involved with the Kentucky Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. I actually started as an assistant. That was my first introduction to the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. I really wasn't familiar with what the agency did, or I really didn't have any experience working with people with disabilities. But once I started in that role, it only took about 9 months for me to figure out this was the career I wanted to stay in. So I switched my degree, my undergraduate degree, to psychology. I finished my degree up, and then once I completed that, I transferred to a counselor position. And that role was very interesting for me. I grew a lot in that role. I grew up in a very rural area, small town, so the caseload that I carried was actually 3 rural areas. So it kind of was a perfect fit for me. I related very well with the consumers. I was used to having limited resources. So I think that my background plus the education that I received just kind of evolved to where I was very comfortable with the rehab counseling. And of course, once I was there, I realized that I needed to complete my master's, so I started in the Master's in Rehab Counseling program here at UK. And although I was a counselor with the agency full-time and going to school full-time, I think I probably learned a lot better that way because I was able to relate what I was learning in the classroom and directly to the job. So that was a good fit for me. I think I learned a lot. I applied a lot of things. Lights would go on in classes, and I would be like, oh, that would work with this consumer I'm working with. So the 2 years I spent on campus working my master's was very fulfilling for me. After I finished my master's, an opportunity was available for me to apply for a position in our central office, and that's where I'm currently at now. I'm an administrator in central office. Everybody always asks me, do you miss being a counselor? And yes, I do. I probably always will. I tell people that that's where we are, that's where our roots are, and if we forget that, then I probably don't need to be an administrator because I need to keep the consumers first. So counseling is where my heart was, and I'm still considered a counselor. I still think like a counselor. I still put consumers first. It's just now an administrative position. I do have to address things differently, but the consumer's still always at the forefront. In the current position, it's been real interesting to me because as a counselor, I was one of those counselors that was always like, why are they changing the policy? Why do we have to do it that way? What brought this about? And some counselors, you know, it doesn't faze them, but I was one of those going, well, why do we got to do it this way? So I think as an administrator, I'm able to see that side of, oh, this is why they've changed this, and this is why we have to do that. So that's helped a lot because I've been able to communicate better with the counselors and the field staff about why changes are occurring. You know, when you come as an assistant, then a counselor, now an administrator, I kind of have a wide knowledge of all the different positions in the agency. We actually have a lot of folks in our agency that became an assistant, then a counselor, and now is an administrator. So, well, some of those are retiring now, but we're a dying breed, I guess. But I think that just gave me a broader knowledge and a respect for all levels of the agency, and that truly is a teamwork. As an administrator, I get teased a lot because I'm doing the tedious, boring work. It's not tedious to me, obviously. I do what's called the state plan and strategic plan and a lot of policy things, the counselor's manual, our rehab mentor program, all of that stuff is what I work on. Our state plan is required by federal law, and basically this document tells us how our agency, Kentucky, is going to meet what the law says, the Rehab Act. So if we don't submit this each year, then we're not going to get our funding. So it's kind of an important document to me, but when I was a counselor, I never read it. I didn't even know what it was. So as an administrator, I do have an appreciation for another side, but I'm always applying to how that affects the field and how that's affecting the consumers. Of course, our strategic plan is a visionary document, and I work on it as well. And I love that because I'm always able to say, gee, wouldn't it be great if transportation was not an issue for consumers? Or, wow, what if we had an abundance of money that we could do this? So I get to kind of work on those dreams a little bit. knowing that there's always going to be restraints and that we may never reach that pie in the sky, but at least we're striving towards those. So that's the part of the strategic plan that I work on, and trying to motivate our staff to find new areas that we could develop and work on. So that's the two of the main things that I work on now is the state plan and strategic plan. The counselor's manual, that's our internal policy, and it is for our counselors, and it really explains every service that we have and how it meets the law and what our requirements are in Kentucky. So people call it the Bible. Some people call it the Bible for the counselors. It's a tool they use every day, so it has to stay up to date. I'm constantly, going, does that say that? Is that right? So I'm having to go back and look. And I get calls a lot going, I don't understand this. And sometimes the wording gets real confusing, so I go back and change it to try to make it more user-friendly. I'm all the time contacting counselors and saying, will you read this for me? And they'll read it. And I'll say, now tell me what that means. And they'll start telling me, and I'm like, okay, that's not what I meant for that to mean. So I use a lot of people out in the field. I always think, 100 brains are much better than one. So I use a lot of folks, a lot of teamwork with the counselor's manual, a lot of input from different people, including the leaders of our agency as well as our field staff. One of the things I work on that I'm real proud of is our Rehab Counselor Mentor Program. This is unique to Kentucky. There's not any other state that we're aware of that has a program like ours. And the purpose of it is to help our new counselors that come on board. I remember when I first came, although I had the background of assistant, I at least knew the lingo, I knew the language, I knew what was supposed to happen, but I didn't have that individual one-on-one to help me just through the day-to-day questions that I had. And we were hearing that from a lot of new staff that were maybe coming on board and getting overwhelmed. So we developed the mentor program. And the mentor program is counselors who have at least MRC, CRC with 3 years of experience, or they have to have 5 years of experience if they don't have their CRC. And those folks are trained yearly to make sure they're on top of our policies and procedures. And then when a new staff is hired in their area, they are actually assigned to that new counselor, and they work with them from day one. The new counselors receive training at central office, but it may be 2 weeks, 2 months, 5 months before they actually get a chance to go to the training. So that mentor helps train them in the process. There's someone they can go to and bounce those consumer questions off of. What do I do? Help. I had unofficial mentors when I was a counselor. I was blessed to have 2 seasoned counselors on both sides of my office, and I just thought the world of them. They were one of the best counselors, and who did I go to yesterday? That's what I do. So I would go to that one, and then the next day I go to that one. So I wasn't burdening them, but they really taught me a lot. And we teach our mentors not to be the ones that make the decisions for the counselors, but someone who they trust, who can teach them to make the decisions themselves. And they don't tell them how they must do things. They let them figure out what is comfortable for them, as long as they're within our policies and our guidelines. So the mentor program has grown, and I continue to work with it. We have 20 mentors across the state, and each year we have open enrollment. So it's a good group to work with. When we do our trainings, it's more of a learning process because they all get together and they start comparing how they do things, and they always learn from each other. So it's a great group. I love working with them. But that's one of the programs I'm very proud of because I started it from the beginning, from a clean slate, and this is our 4th year, and we've presented nationally twice, and we have about 8 states that are trying to develop programs similar from ours. So we're quite proud of that program. A lot of the other things I do, it's one of those as-needed basis. There's always things that come up, and it depends on, what kind of area it is, but a lot of times I do get called in. For example, the Rehabilitation Services Administration, which is our federal governing body. They just visited Kentucky recently, and I'm the liaison for them. So I'm the one they contact, and I set up all the meetings, answer their questions. Anytime they have information, they get it to me, and I make sure we address it. So I'm learning a lot. That's a whole different side, is that federal level. And it's been nice to be able to put together how the federals interpret things and how we interpret things, and then trying to figure out where's the happy medium. So it's still a learning process for me. I don't think I'll ever stop learning in this position. I hope not anyway. But my heart is where the counseling is, and always putting those consumers first is what we strive to do in our agency. And when you have administrators who have been counselors, I think that you're going to accomplish that. So that gives you a little bit of idea of what I work on each day. Pretty much the planning and policy things is what I work on now.
And you've been involved in some grant writing efforts too, haven't you?
A little bit. I'm actually going to get some more training on that. We had a migrant and seasonal farm worker grant that Kentucky was awarded about 5 years ago. I didn't start that process, but some personnel changes. I basically ended up as the director for that grant, and that was a whole new process because working with that population is very unique. Our agency, although we certainly don't deny services to the population, we had just never had specialized services for them. And in Kentucky, the immigration population has grown over 20% in the last 5 years. So it's just amazing. It was like, what are we going to do? We didn't have staff that could speak the language. We didn't have forms translated to Spanish. So we used that grant money to do that, and we hired outreach workers to work with our staff. We offered language classes to our staff. We spent a lot of time just trying to build up the knowledge so we can continue working with this population. The grant is no longer in Kentucky, but we certainly do continue providing services and trying to connect with the resources that are out there for the Hispanic population.
And when did you get started with rehab as an assistant?
Yeah, in 1993 is when I started. So I have about 13 years in with the agency. My mother says I'm a quick mover. I don't think I ever got bored in any position. I just like a lot of challenges. So that's kind of what intrigued me to keep moving and keep pursuing. But I'm very challenged where I'm at now. So I think I'm going to stay put for a while. I've been an administrator for 5 years, and every year it's, I think, oh, I've got this figured out. And then something else comes down the road, and I'm like, I got to do what? So I do like that. It's very challenging for me. And it's convenient for me because it's home. It's close to my home.
And since you've been around for a little while then, have you seen some changes that have taken place within the VR system?
I have, and there's been, of course, the personnel changes, and along with the personnel changes comes philosophy changes, and you see this in all the other state agencies. I've actually worked in other state government agencies, finance and transportation, and when I landed with VR, I immediately knew this was home because they are truly not like some of the other state agencies. They have a common purpose and a common mission. So even though administrations have changed, and along with that, the philosophies have changed, that mission of VR has always stayed put. No matter who the director was, who was in charge, there was enough people in VR that is so strongly about that mission that we were able to keep that going. So the focus has always been on the consumers. And I think that's the best part about our agency. We have not changed that. Now, there's been lots of other changes that have occurred, but there's been changes on the focus on, informed choice. That was a huge issue that came out, in making sure that our agency understood what informed choice was. I'm going to mess up here. You're going to edit this. Let's see, changes.
What about Ticket to Work?
Oh, yes. We'll talk about bad changes and good changes. No. Ticket to Work was recently introduced a few years ago. That's certainly new to our agency. The partnership with Social Security has always been there. But this new... Somebody trying to come in?
Maybe. It's okay. We'll just go on.
The Ticket to Work program has been a challenge for our agency, but I think we have administrators that were so on top of that legislation and were so prepared when it came down that we've done an excellent job of introducing it into our policies so our counselors understand what the ticket is about, and we've been able to explain that to the consumers that come in that have their ticket. Funding, that's always changing. Unfortunately, it's not changing to the best of our agency. So knowing that funding is kind of staying the same, it's not increasing each year, we've had to be very creative. We've had to tighten our belt. And that's a constant change that's going to happen, so it's always being prepared for that change and knowing what's going to happen. I don't think that'll ever happen. That'll never not change. So that's a constant, but it's still a challenge, so we try to face it.
And the course that the students are in right now, and with this lecture, is the principals course, and so students are really just kind of getting started. But there's a mix of folks too. Some who, like yourselves, are already counselors and are getting this information, and others who may not be out in the field yet. What kind of advice would you give them as they start this process in the rehab counseling program?
Well, obviously, if they're in the rehab counseling program, hopefully it's a career path that they have chosen and that they like. What I always told my consumers when they would come in and say, "Oh, this is what I want to do," are you sure that's what you want to do? Because a career is a lifelong decision. Make sure this is the career path you want to go, and make sure that the consumers are at your heart and that getting them employment and independence is what you truly want. There's lots of options with the Master's in Rehab Counseling. The public rehab agency may not be the most appropriate one, although I love it. But there's lots of options out there, and it's a profession that is truly growing. There's a lot more demand for it, so I would suggest to the students to explore. Look around out there, see what is going to be the best fit for you, and give it 100%.
Those are pretty powerful words to close with, unless there's something that we haven't touched on.
I don't think so. I still have a lot of career left. I still have probably 15 more years left with the public VR program. I know a lot of changes will come down the road. The reauthorization is getting ready to occur. We know there'll be a lot of changes with it. Should be interesting, which is probably why the public VR program is interesting to me, is there's always changes. It's never a constant for me. The battle with federals, give us more money. Don't take that program away. Give us this program. To me, that is interesting because it keeps everything mixed up for us. So even as a counselor, you met with consumers every day. Wasn't the same. Each consumer is so different. They all have different needs. They all have different dreams. So even that was a challenge. There's so many disabilities out there. I remember as a counselor, as an individual would come in and I would be like, I don't know anything about that disability, which is why you constantly were researching, always learning on the job. That kept your interest going, per se. I think if I had one of those jobs that you had to do the same thing every day over and over and over, probably wouldn't last very long and definitely wouldn't be very happy. So new students, make sure it's something that's going to make you happy. That's what I always tell my consumers.
Thanks, Allison.
Sure.